What is going on, guys? Adrian here from Losh TV, and welcome to day 21 of Loshgust. Today we're going to be ranking the Halloween Horror Nights houses that I've been through. Yes, I've been through 100 different Horror Nights houses, and this is the third video in this series. If you missed the first two videos, I ranked 100 to 76 and then 76 to 51. Now we're in my top 50. And honestly, I feel like my top 50 has flip-flopped. There's been a ton that has moved in this. There's a lot of houses that I love here. The top 50 contains some of the best houses that I've been through. You don't understand, it's been very difficult. But of course, we have to start off somewhere. So we're gonna start off with 2016 at number 50, Tomb of the Ancients. This house was otherworldly, if I'm being completely honest. Very similar to Scarecrow the Reaping in aesthetic. The outside had a beautiful facade. It was a tomb, obviously, and outside it had the little RV with water container. But it set up the scene very well. You're going through and you're walking through this tomb. It had a single path that I vaguely remember that had a pillar in the middle, and you can either go left around it or right around it. It was a scary 3 seconds of my life because I didn't know which way to go, and honestly, it was cool. I also remember the giant alligator scare that was in here. It was terrifying. Now we move to number 49, in a house that I honestly will talk praise about every single day. We have, from 2015, Asylum in Wonderland 3D. This house is the solo reason that I want 3D houses back at the event. It was so perfect. It was an easy adaptation to bring Alice in Wonderland but spooky to the event. Yes, it was a scare zone back in 2008 in Asylum in Wonderland, and truthfully, seeing this in this aspect was honestly fantastic. Being able to walk through an ultra-violent comic and see everything take place in front of you was fantastic. From the spinning tunnel to the bright lights, this house was just a 10 out of 10 experience. Now from one Shrek Q house to another at number 48, we have from 2016, Krampus. This house, from the scents down to the effects, was fantastic. This house made me believe that the Shrek Q can hold some amazing houses. Of course, we were let down a couple of years. However, we did have an amazing house here, and just like the one prior, it made me truly want to see more of this type of house. And by this type of house, I mean a Christmas-based house. I want to feel the spookiness during the holiday season, but in a haunted house. And we're gonna get that this year with Terrifier, but I loved it here in Krampus. The gingerbread men were amazing. The Krampus design, though we barely saw him through the house, was very good. The snowmen were terrifying, and the elves, oh, those elves were scary. And now staying in 2016, we have at number 47, The Exorcist. Truthfully, this house, before it happened, I was very skeptical about it, due to the fact that if you've seen this movie, you know that it takes place mostly in one room, and that is the bedroom for Reagan. So, thinking about that being executed into a haunted house would truly not work in retrospect. But going through this house and seeing how they handled it, seeing that every other scene was a different scene from the film, and you kind of just walk through it multiple times. You had the throw-up scene, which ended up being probably the most disgusting thing I've ever walked through at a Horror Nights house because the walls were wet, it smelled like vomit, it was gross. But you had that scene, you had the rotating head scene, you had the levitating scene, you had the priest in there, you had the staircase. Truthfully, I think that this was a perfect execution of this intellectual property, and it honestly made me think that Horror Nights can do anything with properties that are very restrictive with what they can do. And now we move to number 46, and this is a house from 2019. We have Ghostbusters. If you guys know me, you know that I love the Ghostbusters franchise, and this house was no different. The fact that this house felt like a dark ride, but as a haunted house, was next level. Being able to walk through the library, see the library ghost, being able to go into the actual firehouse was crazy. Seeing all of the different famous scenes from the movie, like the Stay Puft scene, the Gozer scene, even those are kind of the same scene, but you know what I mean. The Keymaster scene, it was just so cool, and honestly, it made me love this event even more than I already did. Truthfully, this house is a standout of its own, and I wish that we would still have the Ghostbusters in the regular parks as a normal thing, just because that's what this house made me feel like. I felt like the Ghostbusters belong at Universal, so seeing them in this haunted house made me feel like they need to be here in a more prominent role. And now we move to number 45, and we have an original from 2018. We have Carnival Graveyard rust in pieces. This house was a Halloween Horror Nights fan's dream, not for the fact of what it was, but due to the fact that how it was executed. This house was a salvage yard, so we had a lot of random things in here, meaning that it was chocked full of Halloween Horror Nights Easter eggs. That's not why I love this house so much though. So this house had a carnival feel, obviously, it's carnival graveyard, and as you walked around, you had different carnies and you had different scares. You had some very unique scares. Like I remember one very vaguely where it was like one of those water shooting games where you press the button like a gat, someone will get wet, but there's also a scare actor that would jump out in that same scene from behind the scare. So they would open a door, they would come out. It was crazy. But nonetheless, I do feel like Carnival Graveyard had so many moving parts. It had so much to look at. It was just so perfect. It felt like Halloween Horror Nights at its peak. Truthfully, an unforgettable house. And now at number 44, we have Slaughter Cinema 2 from last year's event. Truthfully, I love the original Slaughter Cinema. I feel like this one was good in many aspects. I loved some of the movies they picked. I'm happy that we're going to see Hatchet and Chains back this year. I also really hope that they take the Yeti approach and possibly start to take more and more from these films, because we also see that the Cat Lady of Crooked Lane, which was a poster in Slaughter Cinema 2, is now a scare zone as well, hoping that they do this continuously. But nonetheless, it's not the fact that things are coming back from Slaughter Cinema that I enjoyed it. It's the fact that it just felt like a grungy house. It was so much fun. Those B-movies were great to walk through. Seeing that every single property, well, quote-unquote property in this house, was tied to a Universal IP, essentially, because we had Terminator, we had Back to the Future, we had The Mummy. It was cool. We also had Jaws, which was a huge part of it, because Blood and Chum was so cool. But seeing that every single thing in this house was a homage to Universal's past was so cool to see, so much fun. And truthfully, it made me excited to see if they ever were to do a Slaughter Cinema 3. Maybe a Slaughter Cinema 3D. I don't know. But seeing that potentially be there is amazing. So fingers crossed that we see Slaughter Cinema 3D someday. But Slaughter Cinema 2 was a very solid house as well. Now moving to number 43, we have from 2017, American Horror Story. Now this was the second time that it was featured at the event, so you can call this Volume 2. It featured Asylum, Roanoke, and Coven. And truthfully, there were a few years there where I couldn't think of Halloween Horror Nights without thinking the American Horror Story theme song. I don't know what it is about the bum, bum, bum. It just got me so excited every time. And then the fact that we waited inside the queue and they were playing this music in the queue for this house was amazing. I love the facade for this house. It was actually the Asylum entrance, and it had the American Horror Story logo projected onto the top window. It was truly fantastic. And at the time, I was watching American Horror Story daily. Well, not daily, but like weekly, whenever an episode was released. And truly, it got me more and more excited for the house. I also love that since it was 3 different seasons, we got to see 3 different setups. So essentially, it was walking through 3 mini Horror Nights haunted houses of 3 different properties, but they were all the same thing. They were all essentially tied together by the one brand of American Horror Story. So it was cool. I loved it so much. It's not like other properties where they'll have a mega house for multiple seasons and you'll kind of be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's the same thing. This one is 3 completely different themes inside of one haunted house. It was very nice to see. And now we move to number 42, and this is from HHN 30. We have Welcome to Scary Horror in the Heartland. I can truly say that before this event started, I was very excited for this house. Just in general. I'm a huge fan of Cary, Ohio, or Cary O, if you guys know that joke. You know. Shout out to TLEV. But, like I said, I was very excited to be able to walk through past Cary, Ohio locations that I have never been to, like the spawning, so the sewers. But it was also cool to walk through things like the Hive. We walked through the Wyandotte Estate. It was just a lot of things that I've never seen before as a Horror Nights fan because I started attending in 2013, and a lot of the Cary, Ohio stuff happened before I started attending the event. But it was very nice to be able to walk through this, see Cindy in a scare, see HR Blood and Guts. That room was fantastic. And truthfully, just be able to walk through Horror Nights history. Can't forget Meets, because I got to see Sam Meets. And yes, I saw Sam Meets in 25, but it wasn't the same because Sam Meets was just one actor there. Here, I was transported into Meaty Meets, and it was so cool to see. There was a Bill and Ted reference on the wall, and truthfully, I will never forget that section of the house. I feel like that was the most iconic part of that entire house for me. But nonetheless, Welcome to Scary was a fun house that I will not forget ever. And now moving to number 41, we have a house from 2018. We have Dead Exposure Patient Zero, and what might be one of the scariest Horror Nights houses I've ever gone through, due to the fact that this house had consistent strobe lights. When I tell you it had consistent strobe lights, I mean that. So essentially, the original Dead Exposure, it was supposed to be black and white, and then pictures, like picture flashes, was supposed to be the scale of like everything. So your scares were the camera flashes. In this one, it was more like a zombie virus, and everything got darker and darker as things went along. The train scene in this was awesome because it looked like the train was moving, and then the scare actor would come from the inside of the train. It was crazy. And truthfully, I think one thing that I won't forget about this house ever would be the monkey, like in the beginning of the house, because obviously the virus came from monkeys, so they had monkey scare actors. It wasn't full-scale monkeys. They were little hand puppet monkeys. So it was hilarious to see this, but it was a scare nonetheless. So it was fun. I don't know. Dead Exposure was scary, but also was just a good time altogether. And now we move to number 40, in a house that I think was very fun. We have Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origins. Now, this is an icon house, and technically this is the third icon. Well, if you count icons, the fourth icon house that I've ever been through. But this really felt like a true origin story. Every other icon house that I've been through didn't feel like it was for the icon, except for like, because for example, 25 years of Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters and Mayhem, that was a legacy house, so we were looking at the past. Lunatic's Playground 3D, which was Chance's house, kind of felt like an extension of the Jack show from the year prior, so not an origin story. And then Icons itself was an icon house. It was just all the icons that have been at the event up until that point. And then with Wicked Growth, it really wasn't a full-on icon house. However, we were introduced to the Pumpkin Lord without giving any crazy backstory to him, but it was cool to see him. But I truly don't know what it was about Twisted Origins that made me fall in love with the character of Dr. Oddfellow. It felt like a proper introduction to this character. We were able to see him get the Cane of Souls, and plus the entire event was tied around him as well, so we kind of learned everything about this icon in a 1-year span. Someone that we've known for a very long time as well, because he's also tied into Jack's history, because he is the one that put Jack in the box. But nonetheless, seeing this house, seeing everything go down, seeing Jack get put into a box, even though it was via shadow, was so cool. And I don't know what it is about carnival tents and haunted houses, but it just makes me so happy. And this house did something that no other house has done, and none of them have done it since either. They had projection on the actual tent. So at night, it looked like the actual sprung tent was a carnival tent. It had the yellow and red stripes all the way down, and it truly looked beautiful at night. Made it unforgettable. It truly made me grateful for this kind of icon, and it made me wish that we'd have more icons like this that would get a full-on legacy given to them in 1 year alone. This now moves us to number 39, and we have Halloween from 2022. I'll be honest, I was very skeptical about this house due to the fact that I love the house from 2014, but the last time we had Halloween in 2018, it wasn't one of my favorites. Halloween 4 kind of let me down, so I was very skeptical about this. And the fact that they were going back to the original property, like the original 2014 house, but the original 1978 film, kind of had me in a bind. Because like I said, the 2014 house I think is glorious, perfect, fantastic, should not be touched. This version of the house was actually very solid, to my surprise. We walk in through Smith's Grove Sanitarium, and honestly, from there, the hits just keep on hitting. We had a full-scale model of the Michael Myers house, the Strode residence, and being able to see these scenes again that we saw in 2014 at a much larger scale was crazy to me. Truthfully, I feel like the shape Michael Myers is a prominent force at Halloween Horror Nights and should forever be featured at the event, because the name alone, Halloween, Michael Myers, is synonymous with Horror Nights. Truthfully, something that was meant to happen together. I love it so much, and I would not mind to see another Halloween house anytime soon. Now moving to number 38, we have Universal Monsters Unmasked from 2023. This house is the one that featured Phantom of the Opera, Jekyll and Hyde, and the Invisible Man. I loved it so much for the fact that I finally got to see the Invisible Man in a haunted house, because he wasn't in our 2019 version of this house, but he was here. He was prominent. Very happy to see my boy. Truthfully, this house is iconic, unforgettable, and I do understand a lot of people's complaints about it. They did say they did not like the red, balcony seat sections of Phantom of the Opera, but truthfully, I feel like that added to it. When you think of Phantom, you think of that red atrium. You think of all of that. The only thing that I think this house was missing that Hollywood's version had was the Red Death Phantom, but nonetheless, I digress. Seeing the Invisible Man, seeing that his scares were basically a blacklit room where you can't see their face, but they move towards you, the above scare, fantastic. And then you would go forward and see Jekyll and Hyde, and they were so aggressive with their scares. Truthfully, I feel like this house was a gem. Truthfully unforgettable, and honestly, wishing that we had more Monsters houses like this, and not like Eternal Bloodlines. And now moving to my number 37, we have my favorite film, my favorite movie, Trick or Treat. From 2018, this haunted house was truly amazing. This was actually, fun fact for everyone that's a Horror Nights fan here. Well, if you're in this video this deep, you're a Horror Nights fan. But nonetheless, Trick or Treat was the first haunted house to feature 2-scale houses inside of there. So the facades that you saw were not just throwaway facades. They were full-scale houses of the houses that you saw in the film, which was amazing. This house had an overall chocolate scent, so it smelled very nice. And I was very curious on how they were going to do this anthology film in a haunted house. How would they start? How would they end? They kind of found a good way to blend everything together. We had the quarry scene, we had Wilkins' house, we had so much stuff from this movie, the werewolf scene, which was truly mind-boggling because we saw the werewolves that were used in American Werewolf in London here. So it was just cool to see a blend of so many different technologies in this haunted house. And truthfully, I love this house so much, not just because I like the movie, but for the fact that this felt like a traditional Halloween house, which is something that I wish we would see more of at HHN, but we will someday. And now moving to number 36, we have The Exorcist Believer from HHN 2023. So this house was actually very weird to me because we didn't see the film until after the event had already started. So we were kind of playing the guessing game on how it was going to be executed. But I will say this is one of the cases that after I saw the movie, I thought the house was 10 times better than the movie itself. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's fine, But some of the scenes that were in the house were not featured in the movie. That's because most of the pictures that the creative team received for this house was directly from the set. And there were scenes that were cut from this movie because they've told us this. They talked about it in the interview that they had at Blumfest, but there were scenes that were cut from the movie that didn't make the final cut, and people didn't get to see that unless they walked through the haunted house. So it was nice to see that things got changed, but it was also weird that there were scenes in this house that were not in the movie at all whatsoever. We saw a lot of the demon itself in the house, but we barely saw the demon in the movie. You get what I'm saying? It's weird. This house I thought was really cool though, due to the fact that we had very nice scents, we had very great set design, and one of my favorite things about this house is in the actual exorcism room, the floors kind of glowed red. So if you walked over it, there was these wooden pavers on the floor, and in between those pavers there was a red light that would simmer straight through. It was just so cool because it would pulsate. It was nice. I loved it. It was cool. It was fun. I enjoyed it. So let's move to number 35. At 35, we have Stranger Things from 2018, the first version we had of this house, which truthfully is fantastic when you think about it. I loved everything about this house, from the fact that it had the Netflix intro at the beginning, kind of. So we walked through the opening scene where it's the elevator with the Demogorgon. If you've never seen the show, spoiler alert, I'm sorry. But we walked through that scene, and then right after that scene, we have the Netflix intro, which is kind of cool. It's different. It's never really seen in houses before, but I enjoyed that nonetheless. This house had everything you wanted as a Stranger Things fan. The first season, everything was on display. You had the kids, you had Eleven, you had the Demogorgons. It was perfect. Perfection. Truly an unforgettable house. I love the way that there was different feels when you walked through the Upside Down than when you weren't in the Upside Down. We had this ominous not fog, but it looked like snowfall. It wasn't snowfall, obviously, because it's the upside down and it's Florida, but truthfully, it was amazing to see. Like, the fact that they transported us into the first season, into Hawkins, Indiana, was amazing. I will never forget this house. It was fantastic. And now coming in at number 34, we have Insidious the Further from last year's event. Now, everyone, and I mean everyone that I know, loves this house. This is a top 10 house to them, top 15. To me, I prefer the original. I feel like the original is a lot better than this. But I will give it the credit where credit is due. This house had some solid scares. It was good. But my biggest gripe with this house, is we kind of don't follow any movie. This is kind of just like them using Insidious as an original property. You get what I'm saying? It's weird, but it works. The house is good. People love the house. I enjoyed the house. I didn't love it. I enjoyed it. But nonetheless, I think this house gave us some amazing scares. The red curtain scene is unforgettable. But I feel like if this house would have followed a formula that was more, hey, here's the entire franchise all in one house, I think that would have been so cool, kind of giving us a linear follow. But they probably just decided that going for the scares was a lot better, which, I mean, I understand that you're a horror event, but I feel like for me, at the bare bones, Halloween Horror Nights is all about walking through the films, experiencing the horror with your own eyes. But that's just me, that's just how I feel. Granted, this year we're probably getting something similar when it comes to Terrifier, because Terrifier really isn't that same thing. It's not like we're following the movie, we're kind of just following art in a different way. But nonetheless, I really did like that Insidious house. It was fun, it was good. Which now puts us to our number 33, and it is The Walking Dead, The End of the Line, from HHN 2014. Now, this house, my God, from the facade alone. So you walk up to this house and you had Terminus. You see the giant building, you have a cage on the outside, which was the finale of the house, which was crazy to me. This was one of the best IP houses I've ever done, ever. When I tell you that I walked through this and I was like, wow, I'm not a huge fan of The Walking Dead. I've said this multiple times. But the actual being able to walk through this season, which I think was the best season of The Walking Dead, and see everything displayed in front of me was great. Truthfully, I wish that Halloween Horror Nights didn't use The Walking Dead as much as it did, because then I feel like more people would appreciate houses like this. From the facade, which was the entrance to Terminus, to the finale, which was the chain-linked fences that contained the walkers, truly with the strobe lights made this a terrifying experience, and honestly gave me a newfound appreciation for the Walking Dead property as a whole. And now we move to number 32. We have Nightingale's Blood Pit from HHN 2019. This house was disgusting in sense, but this was the first time that I ever seen the Nightingales in their standalone haunted house. Truthfully, being able to walk through Roman times was my Roman Empire. The one thing about the Nightingales is that they love blood, they love gore. So seeing them go through Roman Empire, Rome, and go through the Colosseum, go through the fights, truthfully made me feel like, oh wow, the Nightingales are a serious thing to look at. Now, the biggest complaint out of this house by a lot of people, except for the scent at the end, was the fact the Nightingales' look was changed and they didn't look the same as they did the last time they were at the event. And truthfully, I understand it. You have to understand that as the event progresses, there needs to be a metamorphosis, things need to change. But I will say this house was very solid, was very good. It had a lot of high energy and truthfully brought a lot of scare into a small sprung tent. So that's 2 thumbs up from me. And now moving to number 31, we have Insidious from 2015. Now, I did talk about not too long ago, Insidious the Further from last year was a good house. But this house was way better in my opinion. I know that they're only like 3 houses away from each other in the rankings, but this house, from the facade alone, going and seeing the house, going through and seeing the scares from the movies, from Lipstick Face for the first time to the Bride in Black, truthfully made me appreciate this property so much. Before going to Horror Nights, I was already a massive fan of Insidious, but going through this house truly made me appreciate the property so much more. And I feel like that's a consistent thing with a lot of these IP houses, because I go through it and then I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing, let me rewatch it. And then I can point out the scenes that I've seen in the movie that were in the house. It's just so cool to be able to pinpoint things from exact locations. This house was a chef's kiss. It was perfect. And I honestly wish that the house from last year was a little bit more like this one. Now I get it, the score was in the house. The scares were at a 10. But there's just things that were here that I wish were going to be in the last one, but it wasn't. Nonetheless, this house from 2015 truly made me love this property way more than I should have, which I guess is why I wasn't as amped about the one from last year as everyone else. But nonetheless, let's move on, because I can talk about this for a very long time. We're going to number 30. We have Puppet Theater Captive Audience from HHN 30. This is one of those houses that made me think, how does this even fit here? So we're walking through this, and there's giant set pieces. And this isn't a sprung tent to preference. And honestly, seeing how massive some of these sets were, how cool it was to walk through this, doing an Unmasking the Horror tour for this house, which was actually my first time ever doing an Unmasking the Horror tour, fun fact, back at 30. Seeing all these giant open spaces truly made me think that this house is crazily huge for the fact that it's in a sprung tent. They used so much of the space that's usually unused for this same location. I feel like sprung tents 9 times out of 10 are always tight and crammed, but this one felt so big and spacious. Truthfully, this house is truly one of a kind, and I'll never forget it. If I'm being 100% honest with you guys, the fact that I know that Universal can go ham with those sprung tents for a house that normally you would think would be tight and crammed, but make it huge and amazing. It's made me appreciate those sprung tents so much more, and truthfully makes me think that they can put anything in there. Now we're down to number 29, and it is Giggles and Gore Inc. from 2014. This house was located in the disaster queue, so this was where Fast and Furious is now. Truthfully, this house here was in my top 5 for years. It's just a lot of houses have shown up after the fact that have made me second guess that. Nonetheless, Giggles and Gore was a clown factory. You heard that right. They would make clowns in this factory, and you would see it. The coolest thing about this house to me was they had not an Easter egg, it was an Easter egg. So they had Jack's blender from the show at 2017, not 2017, HHN 17, but they had his blender and it was a gas. So you would press the button and it would go off. It was cool. I love guest activated triggers, and this house had it. It makes me appreciate it so much more. But Giggles and Gore, nonetheless, to me was my favorite house located in the disaster queue. Granted, I only did 3 of them. I did this one, Havoc, and Run, but I truly feel as if Giggles and Gore was that one house that made me appreciate things so much. It's made me want a sequel more than anything. I would love to see a Giggles and Gore scare zone, kind of essentially just a clown scare zone, but where we see the factory and we see the clowns come out of the factory and see all the different creations that have come out of here. I think it will be really solid. I think it will be really good. I really hope they do something with this one day, and it's not something that's just forgotten in time. And now we move to number 28, and we have The Haunting of Hill House. So this is obviously the house from HHN 30. This facade alone was next level. It was beautiful. It's one of the nicest things I've ever seen. The color in this house was great. So if you haven't seen Hill House, you wouldn't really know how to feel about this. This was the first time they did a Netflix property that wasn't Stranger Things at the event. And honestly, I can say that I think they knocked this out of the park. This was perfection to a T. Truthfully, one of the best executions of a house from property. So property to house, amazing. I'm not even the biggest fan of Hill House, but I will say this on opening night. It was pouring rain. Here's the story. It was pouring rain before we went into the house. We stayed and screamed it. We walk in there. I look at the facade. I'm amazed. We're walking in. There's a scene with a guy on stilts. It's the tall man with the hat. I don't remember what his name is exactly. Could just be tall man. But I walk past. I'm walking straight. This man steps completely in front of me and I fall. I've never fallen in a haunted. Well, I didn't fall, but I completely leaned back, so I almost fell. But that was the first time I've ever been like, oh shit, in a haunted house. Like, it caught me that off guard. It was really good. This house just had banger after banger after banger. Truthfully, wish that we could see something like this again. Granted, Bly Manor was not as good as Hill House, but this house was very solid. And now we move to number 27, and we have a house that is a personal favorite of mine. mainly because it was a dream house that came to life. That is Major Sweet's Candy Factory from last year. This house, oh my goodness, showed us that we can actually utilize the entire location for Fast and Furious. So it wasn't just the fact that we're walking through Major Sweet's factory, it was the fact that there was so many layers. This house felt like old school Halloween Horror Nights. This house to me felt a lot like Giggles and Gore in the aspect that we're watching something that isn't really used at Horror Nights anymore. There's humor, there's horror, there's everything blended together, and I wish we would see more of this at the event. More comedy horror together, but not so much goofy, more so horror aspect of it. But you guys understand what I'm saying, where it's like Giggles and Gore was hilarious and scary. Major Sweets was terrifying and also funny at the same time. I need more of this at Horror Nights. That's just a me thing. That's just a me preference. But I will say Major Sweets was a 10 out of 10 chef's kiss from me. And honestly, you could bring that house back again and again, and I wouldn't be upset. Make Major Sweet an icon. That's my statement. And now we move to number 26, and we have a house from HHN 29. We have Yeti Terror of the Yukon, or I could be funny how I used to say it, Terror of the Yukon. And truthfully, Yeti was that house. So it was essentially the first time we saw a Slaughter Cinema sequel. Truthfully, this house was crazy. So the Yetis were white. They were basically abominable snowmen, but as Yetis, honestly, terrifying because white, snow, red blood. You can just imagine how gory everything looked. And this house honestly created a lot of brand new scares for HHN. The door scare, just a bunch of stuff, the hand scare, honestly was amazing. I truly loved Yeti more than you can imagine. And I was happy to see Campground Kills show up, but this one truly set the mark for what a Yeti house could look like. And honestly, that's my 50 through 26. So that's, so far, 75% of my list, meaning that the top 25 will be coming out next week. I want to thank you guys so much for watching these videos. I know that it's been a little crazy. It's been update after update after update, but there's just so much changing in the park. And honestly, I'm okay with that because I love going to the park. I love filming for you guys. I love getting all this content out for you guys. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you're enjoying all of Loshgust, give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below what your favorite houses have been at Halloween Horror Nights in general. Subscribe if you guys already haven't done so. And stay excellent, my dudes.